Friends, good morning. I'll miss that. I don't know how time goes so fast. It's just been really hard to believe this is my last weekend with you. The anticipation for this weekend has had my stomach in knots for weeks, for months. I've shed more tears over this weekend than I can even count, that I can even express, not because I'm scared of what's coming next, not because I'm scared of where I'm going next or what I'm doing next, but because my love for you and for this parish is so deep. Like, I feel what the Lord is saying through Hosea in that first reading when he says, my heart is overwhelmed. Man, my heart is overwhelmed. Something I've been thinking a lot about in the last couple weeks is how the seminary, I was in the seminary for 8 years, the seminary prepares men to be priests, but it's the parish that turns priests into fathers. It's the parish that turns priests into fathers. It's the parish that draws the heart of a spiritual father out of a man. There's a priest whose doctoral dissertation I read my fourth year of theology when I was preparing for my master's thesis. The guy's name was Father Carter Griffin. Anyway, that detail doesn't matter. But in his dissertation, he wrote this about fatherhood and masculinity. He says, a change occurs in a man's heart when he becomes a father. His very identity is transformed. Whether or not he is worthy of the name, he is forever a father with all the responsibilities it entails. Looking upon his newborn child or his parish, a man can feel utterly overwhelmed and can be struck by the realization that he is now called upon to give himself completely to protect the preciousness that he sees before him. The last 4 years, I have the best seat in the house looking out at all of you and the preciousness that's before me. Oh my gosh. He continues, he says, he is invited to a new life of self-giving generosity. In a sense, inasmuch as the Father responds to this call in his heart, there are two births. The child is born into life, and the man is born into fatherhood. And what is true, friends, on the natural level is equally, if not more true, on the spiritual level. Like, I have loved being your father these past 4 years. You know, oftentimes in life, when the biggest of things show up, like the biggest of hurts or the biggest of struggles or the biggest of loves or the biggest of emotions or the biggest of beauties, like all of our words just fall short. All of our words just feel so puny and so inadequate to the task of trying to express what we feel, what we're experiencing. Like, there are not words to express the privilege that I have felt being your father and walking within the most sacred territory of your hearts and of your lives in some of the darkest moments and some of the most beautiful moments and everything in between, that I've been asked by God to bring light into darkness for you, to carry hope into hopelessness, to bring mercy into your wounds and forgiveness into your shame. And like, I feel what Paul has in his own heart in that second reading that he's writing to this little fledgling community of Christians that he formed and fed and nourished and protected in Ephesus. Like, it has been the privilege of my life to preach to you, as he says, the inscrutable riches of Christ, and to bring to light, or as I would say, to unpack the mystery, to unpack the plan, to lay it out, the plan hidden from ages past in God. And that plan, that mystery, it's the wild conspiracy of love that the lover and maker of all things, he's riveted by you. He's fascinated by you. His heart is ravished by you. He's captivated, and he longs to woo and to wed your heart now and into eternity. He's not just interested in shaping your behavior. It's not just behavior modification. No, it's a transformation of the whole person unto glory indescribable. And like all I've ever wanted for you, all I've ever wanted for your hearts and for your marriages and for this parish, it's the same things that Paul wants for the Ephesians. For Christ to dwell in your hearts. Like the living Christ, the risen Christ, the victorious Christ, Christ the victor, Christ the conqueror, Christ the hunter, the warrior, the bridegroom lover, Christ the warrior poet, that Christ. And that your hearts, like your identities, everything that you are would be, as he says, rooted in and grounded in love, that you would believe that you are who he says you are, that you would believe that you are worth what he says you're worth, that your identity would be rooted in nothing else but his claim and his call upon you. And that as much as is humanly possible in this life, that you would grasp, that you would comprehend the breadth, the length, the height, the depth of his love for you, and that you would know, and not just intellectually know, but like know. Like the kind of knowing that comes from seeing and being seen, that you would know the love of Christ that surpasses all knowledge, and that, through all of this, you would be filled with the fullness of God. And then this parish, like radiant with lives that have been transformed because they know him, because they've been known by him, because they are filled, their hearts are his dwelling place, that this parish would radiate out into this city, out into the diocese, out into the world, the fragrance of his sacred heart, which is a heart that is lanced and pierced out of love. Transformed people will transform people. Like if there's anything that has marked my life as a disciple, not just as a priest, but my life as a disciple, it's been the piercing beauty of his heart that's pierced. Like that our God reveals himself not just simply as having a heart. Like that alone would be astounding, that our God has a heart, which is to say that he has passion and love and desire and longing and dreams. Like that our God has a heart is astounding, but the more astounding thing of the gospel is that he reveals himself as a heart. That's what he is. He is Jesus. He is the incarnate heart of the Father. He is the exteriorization of the Father's interior mystery. He's the very heart of God in our midst. Like you and I, because of our creaturely limitations, like to express our hearts, we have to use 1 million, billion, trillion words throughout the course of our lifetime. But what if you weren't limited and finite? What if you were unlimited and infinitely powerful? And instead of having to use 1 million, billion, trillion words, what if you could just utter one word that fully expressed everything? That's who Jesus is. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. the Word made flesh is the heart, lying in the manger, pinned to the cross. Like the heart of God has been revealed in all of this wondrous mystery. Like in his newborn infancy, the Sacred Heart reveals a love, right? That love which surpasses all knowledge and all understanding, that the maker of the stars would lie beneath the stars, that the great strength of the ages he would wrap himself in defenselessness and total poverty, that the love that moves the sun and the stars, as Dante says, that love, he makes himself poor and naked, like a beggar before your heart. A beggar before your heart. You, with all of your past and all of your struggles and with all of your sins and shame and brokenness, you with all of your habits and coping mechanisms and all of the masks that you wear, with all of your regrets and all of the things that you are convinced disqualify you for love, that have disqualified you from a place at the table and a place in the Father's house, that you are precious to him. You have moved him, that you have rendered him defenseless. Like lying in the manger, looking up at you, he's saying, I will stop at nothing. Or Good Friday, pinned to the cross, he's looking at you, bleeding out, saying, I will stop at nothing to bring you back, to bring you home, to restore you, to redeem you. If only we would look at him whom we have pierced. Friends, you must really look at him whom you have pierced. Not to be crushed beneath the weight of shame and beating your chest, I can't believe I did this to you. No, that's not what I mean, but to look at the heart of the universe, a divine heart, the heart of God, bleeding out of love for you. Like it was and it is and it always has been for you. Like, friends, this has to get personal. This story, this reality, the heart of Jesus, it has to get in here. You have to let it in there. Into the depths, into the stories, into the memories, into the pain, into the shame. You have to let it in. If it's going to touch you, if it's going to change you. It has to get personal. And for that, to do that, friends, we need courage. Teresa of Avila, she said once, and I'm paraphrasing, she said that we need more courage, we need more grace to endure his love for us than we do to suffer the purifications from our own sinfulness. We need more courage, more grace to endure his love for us. Like, I think so many of us, we would prefer the comforting thought of being merely tolerated by him. That we need to toe the line and we need to placate him, rather than the thought of being actively wooed and actively pursued and actively hunted even by the heart of God. That is an entirely different matter. In my favorite book of the Bible, in the Song of Songs in the Old Testament, the bridegroom, he whispers to the bride, right? The lover whispers to the beloved this astounding admission. He says to her, "You have ravished my heart, my sister, my bride. You have ravished my heart. with one glance from your eyes. Friends, this is what the Sacred Heart of God, pinned to the cross, pierced and lanced, this is what he is saying to you right now. In this Mass, at every moment of your life, he's saying to you, you have ravished my heart. And that word ravished, let me say a word about that word ravished. I can't preach a homily without getting some etymology. So let me say a word about that word ravish. It comes from the Hebrew, leva bathini. To ravish, leva bathini. It means, it's a forestry word. The connotation is to strip the bark off the outside of the tree. It's the stripping of the bark. And what is bark? What is its function? It's the defense of the tree. It's the protection of the tree. To protect the soft inner flesh of the tree from the insects and the harsh elements and other creatures. And he's saying to you, the Sacred Heart is looking at you, and he's saying, this is what you've done to me. This is what you do to me. You've stripped me. You've rendered me defenseless. Because of the love I have for you. You have no idea who you are. You are not who you think you are. You are the sum of my love for you. And then he says to you, he looks at you, he says, child, now, have courage and look up. Look at me. Behold this heart that is for you. Behold this body which is broken and given to you. Behold this blood that is poured out for you. And all you have to do, he's saying, all you have to do is step forward and open and receive and trust. And when we do this, when we have the courage to let ourselves be loved by this terrifyingly beautiful love, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, after a lifetime of looking at him, looking at you, looking at the Sacred Heart being poured out for you, we're changed. We're irrevocably changed. And you have been. You are. I've seen it happen. So many of you. I've had courtside seats to witness the most beautiful things unfold in your hearts, to witness you being overwhelmed by this love when it gets personal. And I just sit there and I ask, Lord, who am I that you would call me and invite me to see this? To sit in this splash zone of glory day after day. It is awesome. Friends, there aren't enough lifetimes to thank you for letting me love you, for letting me be your priest, for letting me in, and to thank you for the love that you've poured into me. I am so grateful that this goodbye is hard. It just means that there was a lot of love. And where there's love, there's always the lance, there's always the piercing, there's always the pain, but it is always worth it. You have changed me. You have made me want God more. You've made me ache for heaven more. To ache for the unfading beauty and the unending joy. And perhaps at the end of it all, there's nothing greater that someone could say about someone else. You made me want God more. And friends, because I just don't have the words to express my heart for you, and I couldn't figure out how to end this homily, I want to end by making Paul's words my own. This is my prayer for you. This is my prayer for this parish. He says, I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that he may grant you, in accord with the riches of his glory, to be strengthened with the power through his Spirit in the inner self, and that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, and that you, grounded and rooted in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the holy ones what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ which surpasses knowledge, so that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. Friends, I love you all. Amen.